They taught you that ignoring people is rude. They never told you it is one of the most powerful moves in human psychology. Because the moment you stop reacting, something strange happens. People start reacting to you. Attention is currency. Emotion is leverage. Reaction is submission. Those who control their reactions are controlled. Those who withhold them control the game. Most people leak power every day without realizing it. They explain themselves when no explanation is owed. They defend themselves when no attack was proven. They respond to noise as if it were authority. Ignoring is not weakness. Ignoring is selective blindness. And selective blindness terrifies people. Because humans are addicted to validation. Silence threatens identity. When you ignore someone, you're not rejecting them. You're denying them access to your inner world. And access is power. Most people think power comes from dominance. Real power comes from indifference. Indifference is not coldness. It is emotional sovereignty. The world trains you to respond instantly. Notifications, messages, opinions, provocations. Each one is a test. Every reaction is a signal. And signals reveal position. The moment someone can predict how you'll react, they can control you. That's why ignoring feels uncomfortable at first. It goes against conditioning. You were taught to be polite, available, explainable. But power is none of those things. Power is scarce. Power is quiet. Power is selective. Look closely at people who dominate rooms without speaking. They don't chase attention. Attention chases them. They don't respond to everything. They choose when reality gets access to them. Here's the first psychological truth. People value what they cannot reach. Availability lowers perceived value. Scarcity raises it. This isn't manipulation, it's perception. When someone realizes they can't provoke you, can't rush you, can't pull emotion from you, they feel smaller, not because you attacked them, but because they lost influence. Two people enter a room. One talks loudly, reacts to every comment, laughs too hard, explains too much. The other sits quietly, listens, responds rarely. Guess who people watch? Silence creates gravity. Ignoring is not about others. It's about reclaiming control over your internal state. The most ruthless power move is refusing emotional participation in games you didn't choose. Most conflicts are invitations. Arguments are traps disguised as conversations. Drama is a demand for attention. When you ignore, you refuse the invitation. And rejection of emotional invitations destabilizes people because they expected access. Here's where most fail. They ignore loudly. They post indirect messages. They announce withdrawal. They signal bitterness. That's not ignoring. That's begging to be noticed. True ignoring leaves no trace, no explanation, no justification, no announcement, just absence. Absence forces projection. People fill silence with their own insecurities. They wonder, did I say something wrong? Did I lose status? Am I irrelevant? Ignoring turns the spotlight inward. Another illustration. Think of the one person who stopped responding to you without explanation. No fight, no closure. How long did you think about it? That discomfort you felt is power at work, not cruelty, control. Most people try to win arguments. Powerful people avoid them. Winning arguments doesn't raise status. It lowers it. Because needing to prove is a sign of insecurity. Ignoring communicates, I don't need this interaction. That message is devastating to ego-driven individuals, especially narcissists, especially manipulators, especially attention addicts. These people survive on reaction, starve them, and they collapse. This is why ignoring feels ruthless. Not because it harms, but because it reveals. It reveals who needs validation. It reveals who needs dominance. It reveals who loses control when denied attention. The moment you stop explaining yourself, you separate from the crowd. Crowds explain. Leaders decide. Here's the second psychological truth. Emotional access is earned, not owed. Most people give access freely. They let anyone step into their emotional space. That makes them predictable. Predictability invites exploitation. Ignoring redraws boundaries without saying a word. It says, not everyone gets access to me. That boundary alone raises your value. Now comes the dangerous part. Ignoring will provoke escalation. People hate losing influence. When ignored, they increase pressure. They message again. They criticize, they mock, they provoke. This is the test. If you break silence, they regain control. If you hold it, power shifts permanently. Illustration. A king does not answer every insult. He answers threats strategically. Responding to everything is peasant behavior. Selectivity is royal behavior. Silence is not passive. It is active restraint. Restraint is power. Most people react because they confuse silence with defeat. In reality, silence is delay, and delay is dominance. You are telling the world, I decide the timing. Timing is everything in power dynamics. Whoever controls tempo controls interaction. This is why ignoring drives impatient people insane. It removes urgency. It removes leverage. You become unreadable. Unreadable people cannot be manipulated. Here's the third psychological truth. People respect boundaries they didn't expect. When you suddenly stop reacting, others recalibrate their behavior. They speak more carefully. They approach more cautiously. They hesitate. Hesitation is power shifting. This doesn't mean ignore everyone. That's isolation. This means ignore strategically. Ignore disrespect. Ignore bait. Ignore noise. Ignore low-value interactions. Respond to substance. Respond to alignment. Respond to leverage. Your attention should be expensive. Another illustration. A diamond is valuable because it's rare. Attention is no different. Give it freely and it's worthless. Withhold it wisely and it becomes currency. Most people exhaust themselves reacting to everything. They are drained, anxious, overstimulated. Those who ignore conserve energy. Energy conserved becomes clarity. Clarity becomes advantage. Ignoring also protects you from emotional contagion. Anger spreads. Fear spreads. Drama spreads. Silence blocks infection. This is why powerful individuals seem calm. They are not calmer by nature. They are selective by design. They refuse to internalize chaos. The world will try to guilt you. You changed. You're cold. You think you're better. These are control tactics. They are attempts to pull you back into accessibility. Remember this. People only complain about boundaries when they benefited from you having none. Ignoring is not about arrogance. It's about autonomy. Autonomy terrifies people who depend on influence. This is the art. Not reacting impulsively, not explaining unnecessarily, not engaging emotionally, choosing silence not because you're weak, but because you're disciplined. Because the most ruthless power is not loud. It is quiet, controlled, and unbothered. Ignoring people becomes dangerous only when you don't understand why you're doing it. Power without awareness turns into isolation. Silence without intention turns into avoidance. The difference between a master and someone hiding is clarity. The goal is not to disappear, the goal is to control access. At higher levels of social intelligence, people stop trying to dominate conversations. They start managing presence. Presence is felt even in absence, especially in absence. When you ignore someone intentionally, you're not withdrawing, you're observing. You're gathering data. You're watching how they respond when their usual tools fail. People reveal their hierarchy instincts when ignored. Some become respectful. Some become aggressive. Some become needy. Some become hostile. Each reaction tells you exactly who they are and where they stand psychologically. Silence forces truth to surface. Most manipulation relies on urgency. Answer now. Explain yourself. Defend this. React to that. Ignoring removes urgency. Without urgency, manipulation collapses. This is why silence feels threatening. It breaks rhythm. Human interaction runs on rhythm, call and response, stimulus and reaction. When you interrupt that loop, people lose footing. They stumble. Now here's the rule most people never learn. Ignoring works best when it's unexpected but consistent. If you are always silent, it becomes normal. If you are always reactive, it becomes predictable. Power lives in contrast. When someone is used to access and suddenly loses it, their mind scrambles to restore balance. They replay conversations. They question status. They overthink. That overthinking is leverage. But misuse this. and you lose credibility. Ignoring someone important when alignment is needed is not power. It's immaturity. Ignoring accountability is not strength. It's avoidance. This is where philosophy matters. The philosopher asks, is this interaction necessary for my long-term position? The warrior asks, can I withstand the discomfort of silence? The king asks, does responding increase or reduce my control? Only answer when the answer increases control. Now let's talk about hierarchy. Ignoring upward rarely works unless you have leverage. Ignoring sideways redefines boundaries. Ignoring downward establishes dominance. This is not about ego, it's about structure. People above you expect response. If you ignore without leverage, you look reckless. People at your level expect reciprocity. Ignoring recalibrates respect. People below you seek reaction. Ignoring reminds them of distance. This is why silence feels different depending on who uses it. A powerful person's silence feels intentional. A powerless person's silence feels invisible. The difference is internal certainty. Certainty doesn't need to announce itself. Now here's the paradox. Ignoring people works best when you don't need it to work. If you ignore to provoke a reaction, you've already lost. If you ignore to feel powerful, you're dependent on outcome. True power is outcome independent. You ignore because it's aligned, not because you're waiting for a response. This is where most people sabotage themselves. They break silence too early. They check for reaction. They explain later. That destroys the effect. Silence must be clean. No follow-ups, no indirect signals, no emotional leakage. Clean silence is rare. That's why it's powerful. Another illustration, imagine two doors. One is closed, locked and guarded. The other is open, but no one is inside. Which one feels powerful? Closed doors create intrigue. Empty rooms create irrelevance. Ignoring is closing the door, not leaving the room. You are still present, still aware, still in control, just not accessible. Now let's address fear. People fear ignoring because they fear being disliked. They fear missing opportunities. They fear conflict. But every powerful position requires trading comfort for control. Those who avoid discomfort become manageable. Those who tolerate discomfort become untouchable. Ignoring discomfort now prevents chaos later. This is why kings let rumors die on their own. Why leaders don't respond to every accusation. Why authority doesn't chase approval. Chasing is submission. Silence forces others to chase clarity. And those who chase reveal need lower status. Another critical truth, the person who cares less about the interaction controls it. Ignoring shifts emotional investment away from you. That imbalance creates dominance. But again, this only works if you genuinely reduce emotional attachment. Faked indifference leaks. People sense it. Your body language, timing, tone, everything communicates. If you are silent but emotionally reactive internally, it will surface later. True ignoring begins inside. You must detach from outcomes, detach from validation, detach from the need to be understood. Understanding is overrated. Position is not. Most people want to be understood because they want reassurance. Powerful people want to be effective. Effectiveness does not require explanation. Now, when does ignoring fail? It fails when you ignore feedback instead of noise. You ignore responsibility instead of disrespect. You ignore opportunities instead of distractions. Silence is a scalpel, not a hammer. Used precisely, it cuts clean. Used blindly, it damages everything. Ignoring is not emotional numbness. It is emotional discipline. You still feel, you just don't react publicly. That separation alone puts you above most people. The final shift is this. You stop asking, should I respond? You start asking, is my response necessary? Most responses are unnecessary. Most explanations weaken position. Most reactions benefit the other person more than you. Once you internalize this, your social life becomes quieter. Your mind becomes clearer. Your presence becomes heavier. People hesitate before engaging you. They choose words more carefully. They respect boundaries you never had to announce. That is the art, not cruelty, not arrogance, not detachment from humanity, but mastery over attention. Because in a world where everyone is loud, The one who controls silence controls power. And the most ruthless move of all is letting people realize they no longer have access to you unless you allow it.